Hello everyone, this is Sally McFadden with the Polka Dot Life. Today we are going to be working with the Nature's Sweetness suite of products. And that is one of the suites that was featured in our spring mini catalog. I fell in love with this suite as soon as I saw it. It took me a little bit to get around to playing with it, but I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed the earthy colors, which is really weird because I'm usually a bright girl. But there is a mixed bag with this set. Part of it will be carrying forward and part of it is retiring. At the time of filming, everything is currently still available. So let's flip the camera down and get started on today's project. Okay, I have opened up my spring mini catalog to page 40. And we are so focused about the annual catalog right now that a lot of people just don't even realize that we are also retiring a lot or a good chunk of the products from our spring mini catalog as well. Just so many great things going away that I hadn't played with yet. So I know that part of this suite is carrying over and part of it is retiring. At the time of filming, like I said, it is available. Everything is available. I wanted to kind of show you some parts and pieces. A great trim. And there are these great cork rounds. Those are both retiring. This designer paper is a specialty paper because it has a lot of gold foiling on it. It actually is carrying over, which they don't normally do. Stampin' Up! Doesn't usually carry over designer series paper. So I'm happy about that because it's really nice for a lot of different occasions. The sides with the gold can be a little more formal, but the other sides are very in tune with nature and just a nice neutral palette. So I like that as well. And then there are two different stamp and die bundles. And I'm going to turn the page for those. This one is the Lovely and Sweet bundle. Now this one is carrying forward. However, you will not get the bundle discount, that 10% discount when you buy the bundle. So if that's something that you like, you might want to keep that in mind. This one is not carrying forward. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I think it's my favorite. There are a lot of really great stamps here that you can just use for all kinds of things with all kinds of different sets. I love this one and this one in particular, just to have that little background effect, a little kind of a grunge effect in that one as well. And the dies, I love these dies. These are the fun ones to me. So these ones cut out shapes and there's a nice label, but to me, these ones are where the fun is. But we will be using both bundles today, and we're just kind of mixing and matching. I am trying to be nice to my filming surface, so I am bringing in this piece of small grid paper. I miss these. I love these. I know I can just get them by cutting our regular ones down, but I really like these. I didn't even measure this. I just grabbed a scrap out of my bin, and I'm not sure. It might be thick whisper white, and it might be regular. I'm not sure. I have used my blends and stamped on both. And to be honest, I don't really see a great big difference in that aspect. You always want to use your thick for your bases. If you're going to use white, though, it just adds a lot of stability to your card. So I am using the Memento, and I have this large leaf stamp. And I'm just going to flip it over. And I'm going to hold this on here for quite a while since we don't have the Stamparatus anymore. This is something that I would have used that for. And I still have mine. It's not going anywhere. But if you don't have a stamp positioning tool, then just keep it on there and just kind of press. You just don't want it to move, but you just want to take it like that. Now, I like to sit mine away for a little bit and let it dry. Just because here in Alabama, things can get kind of humid depending on the time of year, but even just if, like we've had rain for days, it hasn't been warm, but it's been rainy. So I will just kind of sit this to the side, and we're just going to continue on with some stamping. I have both an insert piece and an envelope. And I am going to start with the pebbled path. And I'm going to use this grid stamp. And you can position it however you like. I'm just going to do on the insert just a little bit here. You gotta always check that flap to make sure you're stamping the correct position on your envelope. And I'm going to kind of spin it around with the skinnier end going in here. This is no rhyme or reason to this. This is just kind of making a little hodgepodge of a design. This is the part I like to play and have fun and get a little bit messy. Let's open the pecan pie. And we're going to take this one that's like part of the field notes. Just kind of gives it a little bit of a grunge effect. And I'm only using that on the envelope. I'm not using that on the inside. I think it would get too busy. Now, I am going to leave that pecan pie out, but I want to open my Old Olive first. You know, Old Olive is just one of those colors that it's a lot of people's favorite. It is one of my favorite greens, and I am not normally a regal person, like even at all. But I love it. If you're just starting out and you need a green, Old Olive is a great one to go with. I'm just going to do that there. I'm going to scoot that up a little bit. I'm going to do that there. But Old Olive is great for leaves and all sorts of things. It's just a really nice neutral green. Now I am also going to use this pecan pie again, and I'm bringing in the spots, the speckles. Let's just do a little bit there. And you could stamp off if you wanted to. I'm just going in full strength. I find it lightens a little bit as it dries. And that just gives it a nice little kind of very naturey look to it. I'm keeping that pecan pie open. I have a small strip of pecan pie cardstock, and I just want to kind of feel which way I cut that. Make sure I stamp it on the side I intend to. And I'm just going to kind of practice that for a quick minute. It seems to be pretty true as to where it's stamping. Cute. I like that. Just a little note to say hello. Now, if stamping your sentiment on a small strip like that makes you nervous, cut it larger and then cut it down on your trimmer. Because you can see where that track is on your trimmer, and you can just cut it down a little bit closer. And you could always cut it down with your snips too if you wanted to fussy cut around it or something. Whatever you like to do. Now, I also have a few other pieces that I want to use with my ink pad here. I have a couple strips of this designer series paper. And I have a sponge dauber. And I just put a little label on mine so I know what it is. And I kind of like to get this kind of primed up, if you would say, to get it a little bit ready to go. And I just want to darken the edges. I don't want to go really crazy with this, but it does kind of help to give it a more framed in look, especially on the designer series paper. It comes off maybe as a little bit light. And just with all of the details in this card, it just kind of helps bring a little focus. And you just really skiff along. Now, you can go a little further in if you want it to be thicker, or like over here was a little bit thinner. So see, now if I take it and turn it a little bit more towards the front, then it makes that border a little bit thicker. If you've never done this with a sponge dauber, they're a really nice little tool. They're inexpensive if you're just getting started. They're a great addition to your craft stash. I also want to do that. I cut this out with the next to the largest deckled rectangle. And I just want to go ahead and just do a quick little coating with that as well. I want a little bit more than the edges maybe on this part, but not super thick. And I generally don't share daubers between colors. My blending brushes, I do just use one for browns and maybe one's for light pinks and one's for bright pinks, but I don't have one for every shade of pink, for example. And so I'll just go in maybe here and there, making parts a little bit darker or bringing it in on these corners a little bit. And some parts are darker and some are a little bit lighter. Like you'll notice I haven't re-inked my dauber after everything. So there is this part. Now I probably, just for mess sake, I'll just rub a little bit of that off before I put it back. I have a little plastic case that I keep these in. Now I can put this away. I'm going to keep this down to protect my surface because when you work with Stampin' Blend markers, they bleed through your paper and that's what you want to happen, but they're permanent. So I don't want to mess up my filming surface here. So I am just going to put this here. And I have some blends, and I went ahead and started this just because I have all these things that touch leaves, and I kind of like for this area to be dry before I move to this other area. And my old olive blends are brand new, and wow, are they ever juicy. Oh my goodness. So I am going to start with the lemon lolly. And I don't want anything real drastic. It's just going to be kind of wispy, just kind of giving this center, and this is the light. I would start with your light, and then if you want to add more color, you can go in with the dark, just because it's easier to add more color than it is to make it lighter. So there's the lemon lolly. Then I have the pecan pie. I'm going to start with my dark. Again, everybody has their preference of how they like to do this, and what works for you might not work for me or vice versa. So just get in there and play with them and experiment and see what you like to do. Whether you like to start with your light and then go add the dark. And with this one, I'm just kind of going over these shade lines that the artist gave us already. And then I just come in with my light. Now, especially with my green, I'm going to stay back off these edges a little bit because that green is just I don't know that I had used it yet. It was brand new. My other nib had frayed quite a bit, so I got a new one. And wow, they are very, 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 very juicy. And you know, this will continue to bleed. Like I say, I tried not to get super tight into that, but it still bleeds out into that a little bit, into that edge. So I'm going to try to stay back off that flower. Now if it bleeds a little bit into this green, I don't mind. The worst it would do is make it a little bit muddy, but with this you could get away with it. And so for these little tiny spots, like these little dried pods, the little bud pods or whatever they would be called, I just kind of dot on those. And you can see my coloring is not the greatest on this stem part, and it's kind of bothering me. We'll just see what it looks like when it cuts out. I can always put a little piece of those cork rounds on them or something like that, but right now we're just going to deal with it. So I'm going to come in with my dark, and really I just kind of dotted, and I actually took my little thin portion and did my other one, and maybe that was my mistake too, because it kind of tends, even though it's finer, it kind of tends to lay down a little bit more ink. So I just went ahead and, like, again, just matched what the artist has already given us. And then I'm going to come in with the light. And I'm just going to go around that. And if you kind of stay in this part of the leaf, this little ridge there, it's probably going to go ahead and fill that in. It's probably going to bleed out into there anyway. I find coloring super relaxing. If you don't like to color, then just stamp with the color that you think fits it best, or just, you figure out what you like to do and what works for you, and you just adapt the set or this card design to do what you like to do. So there, I have this, and I'm going to let that dry before I run it through the die cutting machine. I will be honest, I didn't love when I first did this. Like I say, it was so dark. I took my color lifter and ran it over here just to kind of blend it in a little bit. And so I'll see if I need to do that on this or not. Now, I also took a piece of basic white cardstock and I cut it out with that same size of the deckled rectangle. Then I took the long die with the holes in it, and I just positioned it here and cut this out. Now this, I used the spritzer. We have these little spritzers. They are great. And now this has gray in it, so I don't want to use it on here. And it kind of would really mess up my filming surface. I have a great big clipboard that I use, a very, very extra large clipboard. And I'll put a piece of paper on it, probably like a whole 8.5 by 11 sheet, and I prop it up where there's nothing around that I can get dirty, and then I will spritz it with this. This is just water, and it's either like 1 or 2 drops of the ink refillers, and you can just adjust how many drops you put in by how dark you want it. But this is how I got this speckled effect. There are a lot of ways to do this. You could also take your Stampin' Blend marker with this end and flick it like this off the cap. I tend to not like to do that because it's hard on the nib, and so I tend to not do that. You can also take an aqua painter, if you pretend this was an aqua painter and you took your acrylic block and got into your ink pad and you got a little slurry of ink there, a little watered down ink. You could get some on your water or on your water painter, and then I just take my bone folder and I do this. There is more than one way to get this effect, and you could also just take that speckled stamp and do the same thing. It would be a little bit different of a look, but it would work if you just wanted to add a little bit of texture to your card. Now I am just going to grab this blending brush. I don't need a whole lot of blending going on, but I do want a little bit. And I am just going to take my ink or my block and do this. And I've been playing with this a little bit. This is new for me to try. I got some glycerin at Walmart. It was just in with like the first aid supplies. And I just want to loosen this up a little bit. I think what it does is it thins it out a little bit, and then it also gives it a little more open time. But I kind of feel like it smooths it out a little bit. And you don't have to start out, but I like to go ahead and get my brush kind of primed up. And we're going to cover that up. So even the fact that I let that slip and it kind of has a little brush mark in it, it's fine. Be the same way if you had gone straight from your ink pad and got a little bit of blob. But you know, as that dries and you blend over it, I don't know, I'm finding it a little bit softer of an effect here. And like I say, I am going to keep this darker portion in the center and just kind of blend out. I don't want like a big thing. I want to have those speckles still remaining, but I just kind of want a little shadow effect, if you will. And like not even a neat shape, just kind of a random shape. Put my mess over here. And then I think we can get rid of our ugly piece of grid paper. So now we can just assemble our card. It just uses your standard card base. We're using pecan pie. And let's even take, and like I say, mine was just a scrap. So if your piece isn't exactly the size that I list, and all the measurements will be on my blog post that is linked down below, then just take the piece that you have. If it's just a really skinny one, I just hate to waste it. And I think it just adds some nice color and bringing that outside to the inside of your card. I could get that grid paper and get this really all lined up perfectly if we wanted to. I'm just not going to be that absolutely perfect about it. And my piece was even a hair long, so we're just going to flip it over and get it with our snips. And I know I usually like to put my liners in with a tape runner, but I don't have that over here, so we're just going to go in with our liquid glue. Remember, spider webs, not big rivers of our liquid adhesive. It's a great adhesive until you use too much. So there, we have the inside of our card already decorated. Of course, you could do a greeting on the inside if you wanted to. That's also fine. This comes together pretty quickly. I am also going to put some liquid adhesive right here. And I'm just going to kind of tilt this. And let's just make sure it's not going off the edges. I want to have a little bit of margin. There. Just give it a little rub. Just sometimes with designer series paper, if you have too much glue, it can kind of suck up together, and it doesn't always look nice if that happens. Then we are going to take this piece. We're going to use a little bit of this braided trim. Let's see, it's called faux leather trim. And it's mostly brown, but it has a little bit of a gold finish to it. And I am just going to very easily take this in and out. Not going to do anything super fancy. You just want to, since this is really strong, you don't want to break through those perforations, so just use a little caution as you're pulling it through. Just don't want to be like you're lacing up your work boots. And you want it to lay fairly flat, and I was talking and not watching, so I kind of let that get curled. And then I just like to take and just loop it around and pull it through. And just kind of scoot that knot down and pull it. And I'm just going to cut off at an angle. And I don't use my ribbon scissors for this because it's kind of coarse. And so I can just put that about where I want it to be. If I need to adhere that down a little bit more, we'll put a glue dot on it. And then we'll just do the same thing here at the bottom. Just loop that through and pull it through. Loop it around, pull it through. There we go. And we'll just even cut a little bit more. And then I am just going to put this down with some liquid adhesive. And I'll get out here a little bit. We don't want a ton. We don't want it coming through those holes, but we do want it to adhere. And a little bit in the center. And then we're going to go the opposite direction with this. Now on my first card, I did take my scissors. I failed to do that here, but I took my scissors and I just kind of roughed these edges up a little bit. I failed to do that here as we put this together, but you could certainly do that. It just depends on what kind of look you like going for on your card. I actually prefer the roughed up one, and so I will take a picture of that one and use that one for my blog so that you can see kind of what it looks like. You can use scissors. You can use an emery board, whichever one you like the looks of, or a combination of both. Next, I have some dimensionals, and I have our die cut image. I went to the die cutting machine and cut that out. And we are going to pop it up. And you can use as many or as few as you like. I don't like to take my time coloring something and then have it get smashed or bent, so I use quite a few. And you know, I might just cut one of them in half. Use on the skinnier parts of these leaves. one here and one up here. Then we just remove our backings. Now you can put some glue over this if you want to have some wiggle room. Let's just do that just to show you if you've not seen me do this before. These are a great strong adhesive. For this especially, it's not on an embossed surface, so you don't need to add the glue. If it was embossed, I would do it for sure. But this way, it just kind of gives you that little wiggle room that we like to have. And let's kind of see about, I want this up towards the top. Don't want it going over. It can go over these, but I don't want it going over the edge. So there, I love that. I think that's really fun. So we have our grading, and then we have just a strip, another strip, a leftover piece of that designer series paper. We're going to put this on first. Sorry, I'm just going to pull this one off with my fingers. And I do want this coming off a little bit over here to the side. And just depending on the angle that you put everything on, you may have a little bit more hanging off or a little bit less. And then this one's just going to go beside it. So I think we will put one dimensional on this side. And then we're just going to put glue. And while I have it out, I'll just do that since it's out. We're just going to stagger that. There. I like this card. I think it just has a little bit of depth to it, and so I think it's nice. Now we have our adhesive back cork grounds, and I am sad that these are retiring because I think these are really cool, and I think that we could find a lot of uses, I think, for masculine cards and those kind of things. I know that it probably, some people feel it has more of a fall feel to it or something. I don't know. But I just really, really enjoy working with these. And normally I pull things out when they retire and don't keep them in my stash, but these ones might have to stay. So I like that. I think that that is really a fun card. And there, see with our envelope how it just really is a nice piece of stationery. It really is. Even though this card has flowers on it, I think that this would be good for either to send to a man or a woman. I don't think that it screams one way or another. Now, of course, I have other examples for you. And where I started was here. This was my favorite card on the examples. I love this one using that die. And so I've made two versions of it. I didn't make it exactly like this one, but I took the concept and then I created my own. So don't toss out your old catalogs because they are great idea books. So I started with this card. I took one of our masks, I made a layer, and I just made a background. And then I cut this die several times, and I think there's maybe a place or two here I had to piece underneath, but this strips here, so it doesn't really matter. And then I just cut out some pieces of greenery And then I used the little cork rounds here to make the floral centers. And I popped this layer is popped up, but these are just all glued down. And I thought that this was really fun. Today is all about you. Happy birthday. And I made these just that little different of a fold. And I cut 3 of those little lemon lolly flowers out here and put them in the corner of my card. And so then this one is the same concept. And instead of stamping on my envelope, I just used some of that designer series paper. But I thought, oh, wouldn't this be like a lovely wedding card? I just thought this was really, especially if it's an outdoor kind of wedding, if they're really into the outdoors. To get this gold part back here, I used this stamp here in my Versamark, and I stamped it on the background of my card. I did not put a layer underneath here. I just stamped it on my card base with the Versamark. And then I took some of the gold leafing and I just rubbed them into there. And I'm not sure if I did use the Versamark or if I used maybe some liquid glue. Either one will work. You might just have to do a little trial run on a piece of scrap to see which you like better. It's going to depend on how much gold you want to stick to your card and how much you want to be able to flake off. But then I just cut these leaves out in the white, and I did the same thing. So, like I say, 2 very different looking cards, but the same basic layout. I just did this part a little bit different, and I didn't put a greeting there. And then inside, I did some heat embossing in the gold, and I added a gold layer, and I stamped and did this with heat embossing as well. And I used some of that gold trim that we have. And I think it's going away as well. I'm not certain about that, but that's something that usually comes in and out of our line. Maybe it's usually always in for the holiday, but there's going to probably be something with gold that you could make work. And then I had a lot of fun with this card. I really got a little grungy with this. I sprayed with my mister with this, I believe it was Pebble Path. And then I did some stamping on top of that. I'm not sure. I think maybe I stamped it first and then I sprayed it. I can't really tell, to be honest with you. This one I stamped afterwards. It was on a scrap and I stamped afterward. But this just looks a little bit like maybe I did the stamping first and then I sprayed. So again, get in there and play. Use something that you're going to throw away anyway, and just do some playing and see what you like. And then I cut different greeneries and put under here. These are the deckled circles, and just used one of those little cork rounds here. And then I just used some pieces that I snipped off from the front, just peeked those in on the corner here, and decorated the envelope in much the same way we did with the card today. So here are all of our cards, and I wanted to bring in this one that I originally did as a sample and just hold it beside that. That is the difference between a brand new Stampin' Blend marker and one that squeaks and carries on every time you fuss over it. It was just really, really dried out. And so that is the difference between the two. And then you can see here that this rough edge, I like that. I really do. I'm sorry I just got busy and forgot to do it over here. But I like both of them. Of course, the most important thing we do is after we make our cards, we need to send our cards and bless somebody. There are so many lonely people in the world, or just people we haven't checked in with for a while, that we just need to send them a little hug in the mail. As always, remember to be kind, send a card, and do something creative. Bye-bye.